Hey everybody, Dan here from Sci-Fi Models and Stuff, and today we're going to be showing you how to paint a realistic right hand of Doom and undershirt on our 1/3 scale resin Hellboy bust. This is the second of 3 tutorial videos about this kit. In the first video we showed you how to paint realistic skin tones, so if you haven't seen that already, make sure you check that out. And our final video will show you how to paint his coat. If you learned something from this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Thanks for watching. Since the hand is kind of a rock-like material, what I'm going to do is I'm going to prime it first in a rust red color or a hull red, and then we'll work on some coloring from there. Okay, so you see here I got my Hand of Doom all primed up. Looks pretty good. I didn't find any major errors that needed to be resanded or filled or anything, so that's good to go. Now to give it some different texture and some different colors, we're actually going to brush paint on a lot of different colors here. So I have all my colors set up and let's take a look. So we're going to be using a number of different tools too. And they're very basic tools. First is a natural sponge. This has a lot of different shapes and textures that we can use to create different shapes and textures. It's pretty cool. Got another piece of sponge. It's just a kitchen sponge. Nothing too exciting. This was ripped off of Scotch-Brite. An old ratty brush. An old ratty toothbrush. And some old ratty paper towel. So what we're going to do, we're going to mix up some paints on our palette. Then we're just going to kind of wing it. It's going to get a little bit messy, and we'll see how it turns out. So since we're brush painting, I like to use Vallejo for that. And I have a whole line of things set up that we're going to be using. So first off, we got the obvious: red, yellow, white, maroon, orange, different orange, gray, and a black brown. So we're just going to use those kind of as needed. I don't really have a plan worked out just yet. Several months ago I did a smaller scale right hand of Doom that came out really good, and I basically did it this method. So we're basically going to try to recreate. Now I don't exactly remember the paints or how I did it, but I have the next best thing. That's this. This is actually the palette I used to mix the paint. So we're gonna take a look and see what I did back then and go on from there. Okay, so it's been a couple hours and everything has had time to dry and get to its completed look. So it's looking a little bit grayer than I would like. The idea is right, but just a little bit gray. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to thin down some red paint really thin. Then I'm going to lightly airbrush over everything. And hopefully that'll just kind of shift the tone of color back towards the red. Okay, so that really did the trick. Last thing we're gonna do in terms of major colorations, we're actually gonna take a dark Mars red, it's called. It's kind of a low lighting red. And we're gonna hit some of the cracks and crevices just real quick. Okay, I'm really pretty happy with that. So for the last final step, for now anyways, is we're gonna do a dark wash inside all the cracks with oils. That'll show some nice gradient tones, and it should look pretty natural. Okay, well I thought I was filming a time lapse of the last step of that, but it turns out my camera wasn't on. But you can get a good idea of what the effect I'm going for there is. So it looks kind of like a lava red rock stone with a little bit of shadows in there, but nothing too extreme, no real super high contrast. We'll hit this with a flat coat later after everything's dry, and that should be good enough. Really happy with the way this turned out. Okay, so the oil wash has dried. Did a pretty good job. It's looking nice and flat now. Only issue really is it's almost a little bit too gray and dark again. Probably just because that black wash acted a little bit like a filter. So for real this time, the very last step is going to be hitting it with that airbrushed red. Just very selective spots trying to go around the dark areas. So we're going to give that a shot. Okay, and I think that did it. Brought us back to the red a little bit. It's pretty subtle compared to what we have, but in person it's definitely noticeable. So great. And that's how you paint Hellboy's Right Hand of Doom in 1/3 scale. Okay, so we want this shirt to be black, but one good trick is you almost never want to paint in a pure black. Because that gives no room to do lowlights. So what we're doing is painting it with a base color of a really, really dark gray, just a few shades away from black. And then later when we want to do some shades and lowlights and the creases and folds, then we'll go in with a real black and you'll be able to tell the difference then. Okay? Okay, so that is sprayed. It looks very dark, but trust me, it's not quite black. So now we're going to do a little highlights. And we're going to work our highlights up, starting first with a German gray, which is a really dark gray, and working our way up to lighter gray for some of these folds. Then we'll do some highlights, or I'm sorry, some lowlights in the corners, underneath the folds, around the edges, and that should do it. Eventually we'll have to do something a little bit different for the zipper. Okay, so now we got our highlights done. We're going to go in through with a really dark black and do some lowlights. So right now the texture on the shirt is giving me a little trouble. As you can see in the camera, it's really glossy and kind of shiny. And I really want it to be super flat and super dull. So dull coat isn't quite cutting it on here. So I'm hoping that airbrushing a really flat matte coat on there will help it out. But we'll get to that a little bit later. What we're going to do now is just get a little bit of aluminum paint and we're going to dry brush the zipper area. So probably got a little bit too much to start there. That's okay. And we're just going to go real light on that zipper. We still want to see all the black underneath it. This paint is a little bit too thin for that, I think. So I wasn't quite happy with how this is all looking. Part of it's the camera, but it just looks a little odd. It looks real shiny and glossy. So I'm going to spray a little bit more on that's very matte, and I'm going to go low pressure and see if we can flatten that up and give it a little texture. Still looking a little funky on camera. Looks better in person, but for right now, we're gonna let that sit. We'll do a little detailing later, but we're just gonna roll with it for now. Okay, so been a little bit of dry time. Still looks kind of funky, so we're gonna hit it with a matte finish by Vallejo, which is super matte and really should give us what we want. Okay, so that helped quite a bit. Still not exactly perfect, but by the time we're done with some pastels and stuff, it'll look good. So next, what we're gonna do, we're gonna try dry brushing the zipper a little bit again. And this time we're gonna be using Tamiya Chrome Silver. Let's give that a shot. Yeah, that actually looks pretty good. Just gonna go back and forth. Really only scraping the tops of the zipper. We're going to come back through a little bit later and put a black oil wash on that to make the other parts of the zipper pop. Starting to look good. And I probably shouldn't be doing this early in the game, but I am getting curious, so I'm just laying a black wash over that zipper right now to see how it looks. And hard to tell on camera again, but looks really good in person. All right, things are starting to come together. Last major piece that we have to do is the coat. And that was part 2 on our painting series of this 1/3 scale Hellboy bust. Stay tuned for the last part, in which we'll cover his coat and any fine details. And don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, thanks for watching.